The Pirates have won 6 in a row and shut out the Cardinals for the entire series. Let's talk about the history of this run, how real it could be. Next on Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Welcome to Locked On Pirates. I'm Gary Morgan. Guys, the Pirates started this 6-game stretch with a negative 68 run differential. And right now, as we sit here, they have a negative 29 run differential. That's 39 runs that the Pirates have chipped away from that run differential figure. We're going to put this stretch in its place historically today on the show, and then we're going to spend the rest of the time talking about how real it could be. The Pirates haven't allowed a run since Sunday in the 5th inning. In fact, they've only allowed 4 runs since Friday. The hitting deserves attention, but don't forget what this staff has done. I mean, it's historic what we've seen from this pitching staff. I'm just going to run through some things. Some of these were from Dan Zangrilli. Some of these were from some other historians. Some of these are things that I just picked up. So let's go ahead and read through some of them. I just think they're interesting nuggets. And we really need to put this stretch of play kind of in perspective as to what this team's done. Before we start talking about whether it's real or not, we should talk about how historic it is, because that will usually tell you how sustainable it is. They are the only major league team since at least 1901 to score 43 or more runs and allow 4 or fewer runs over any 6-game span. So, in other words, what they just did to that run differential, I think it's safe to say that don't happen much. All right. So that's pretty historic. And you see a lot of records like that where 1901 gets mentioned and there's a little bit of vagueness about it. Well, that's considered the modern era of baseball for those of you that don't know. 1900, 1901 is when they really started keeping accurate records, more accurate records. You'll see some records that go back beyond that, but not many. This is literally called the modern era of baseball. So that's basically all it is a way of explaining, hey, we didn't do the greatest job of keeping track of things before we knew this was going to be a real league, right? They've now won 7 straight at home. They haven't done that since 2019. The first time they've had 3 consecutive shutouts since 2015, also against the St. Louis Cardinals. In fact, they've only done this 3 times since, again, 1901. The last time the team completed a 6-win or better homestand without a loss was in 2004, where again, St. Louis was one of the victims. The Brewers were the other, and they went 7-0 in that stretch. I'd be remiss, too, to not mention that Mitch Keller is now the all-time strikeout leader at PNC Park. He passed Paul Maholm, and every K that Mitch has from here until he's passed or moved on will set the new K record at PNC Park. I think that's fun. I think it's also going to get pretty annoying for everyone on the field that has to throw every strikeout ball that he comes up with over to the dugout for authentication. But I hope it's more funny than annoying, because he's going to continue to do it as time goes on here. What a series, though. I just, as a fan, just take off all of what we've been mad about all year and whatnot. I'm not saying that this little stretch of race is that. It shouldn't. But I do think that it's fair to kind of just sit back as a fan and absorb the historic nature of what just took place. Realize that this doesn't happen a lot for any team, let alone the Pittsburgh Pirates, and enjoy it. What you just witnessed this weekend is just not something that's going to come along very often. We're going to talk the rest of the show about how sustainable this is. And I'm going to tell you before we even get into it, it's not. This is historic stuff. They're not going to keep doing this, not to this level. But there's been some good stuff that I think we can take away from this that maybe is sustainable. Maybe they can continue to do. I think it's difficult or impossible to ask them to keep putting this kind of play together. You know, we're talking about a unit right now that defensively is playing at the top of their game. Offensively, I think playing to the top of their capabilities for the most part. And pitching, I mean, what else can you improve over, 4 runs over 6 games? The team is doing as good, I think, as you could possibly dream of, at least in all 3 areas at the same time clicking together. That you're not going to see that the rest of this season. That's just insane to expect. You're not going to see them never lose again. I mean, you get what I mean? Like, so when we talk about it being sustainable or can they continue this, we're going to keep it in the realm of possibility and reality too. We're not going to expect them to shut everybody out the rest of the season and continue to play the way they are. That is an impossible request. You're not going to see that. But that doesn't mean that I don't think we've seen some very valuable things. I do think that one of my predictions is going to come true, though. I mean, if you've been following this show since I took over, at least around when Don Kelly succeeded Derek Shelton, I know that we started talking about what would happen if Don Kelly kind of turned things around. And I specifically brought up to you guys the pain that it was going to cause you at the deadline because they're still going to have to make some moves. And if Don Kelly managed to turn that around in the time frame before we get to the trade deadline, well, some of these moves are going to be much more painful than it looked like they might be when the Pirates were just losing repeatedly. It's really easy to think that you're happy about trading just about anybody when your team's losing. But when your team starts winning and certain performers start to perform, it gets a little bit harder to start to want to say goodbye to all of them. And I think that that's where we're getting to. You have some time left before that deadline. This could certainly revert. Pirates could certainly end up going back to a lot more of what we've seen versus what we've seen recently. It's out there. It could happen. And if it does, hey, my silly prediction of you being upset about them moving things on or the team making Don Kelly's job harder than it was, I think that stuff will stand up. But if they keep winning like this, you guys are, I think some of you are going to be pretty upset about some of these moves they got to make. And it's why I went so far out of my way to try to explain to you, like, the difference in when you move on from a rental, when you don't move on from a rental, what needs to be part of the equation when you make that decision, the realistic nature of whether you can or can't re-sign certain guys who are pending free agents, all of that sort of stuff. It's to give you the tools to understand these moves, not to give you an answer that makes you completely okay with it. You're a fan, you're not supposed to be as pragmatic as I am. I try to be that way because to me, I can't look at this stuff honestly if I let emotions guide me. I have to let facts guide me. I have to let information guide me. So that's the difference between the two of us. But this weekend, man, I just wanted to have fun with it. This week, I just want to have fun with it. I'm a fan too, man. I want, you know, when my team is playing like that, I don't see that stuff very often. I'm going to celebrate it. And that's what we just did. Historic stuff. We got to step away real quick. When we come back, let's start digging into how real this really could be. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last minute deals. With Game Time, the price you see is the price you pay. No hidden fees. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Hey, hit me with a subscribe. You guys have been crushing it lately. We've really grown quickly here in the last couple of weeks, and I appreciate what you've done. So make sure you keep doing it, keep telling your friends, and make sure that others are signing on to check us out here at the good old Locked On Pirates show. We are really having a good time, I think, and we're building something cool, I think, with this team. And sure, it makes it a little bit easier when the team is doing well, and I think that helps for sure. But that's not where I want to go with this whole thing. I don't think that the only reason the show's expanding is because the Pirates are doing well. I think it's because I hope you're appreciating somebody that's not trying to constantly drive the team into the ground. I think they do a good enough job of that themselves. I'll point out what they do wrong and right. I hope that you kind of see both sides of the coin, because I think the more you know about the good, the bad, and the ugly, the better informed decisions that you make about some of these topics we discuss. Like, how real is this, though? Among all MLB teams, the Pirates have played the most games against teams with a winning record. They also have the most wins against 500 or better teams with 29. I bet neither of those were things that you were thinking of with the Pirates. I bet neither of those things were what you believed. I think a lot of people told you that we had one of the tougher schedules in Major League Baseball early on. But this is a little bit of evidence. We're halfway through the season now. The Pirates have done some good work against teams that other teams haven't. And I find these types of things in baseball in particular to be a little suspect. Okay. In the NFL, if you're an NFL fan, it's a little bit easier. You got 17 games, you know. Let's say you're playing somebody who is like 5-0 in week 6. Well, that team's great, right? Well, how many times in the NFL do you find by the end of the season that team that started out 5-0 is suddenly like 5-7, in week 14 or whatever? Because the world comes crashing down, or it didn't take into account that they faced easy teams early on, or a couple of the teams they beat who are good were missing their quarterback or their best rusher. I I think like with football, it's a little bit easier to kind of break those sorts of conditions down about the different teams that you're facing because there's fewer. With baseball, yeah, this record thing is cool, and I do think that over a half season sample size, you can take something out of that stat. But I also think it doesn't necessarily account for what the team looked like when you came into playing. Well, let's talk about like the Mets, okay? I'm not taking anything away from the Pirates for what they did to the Mets. It's historic, it stays historic. That doesn't matter that the Mets came in cold. But that's a team that's over 500 that the Pirates are rightly putting in this stat here that it's 3 of the 29 wins that they've secured against those sorts of teams. But the Mets came in cold, right? The Mets were struggling, and the Mets are still struggling. So you caught the Mets probably at the right time. Had you faced the Mets in the first 2 weeks of the season when their pitching staff looked like arguably the best one in the league, I think it's a little bit different. You do feel differently about that series. The Cardinals, for instance, they have a better record than the Pirates. It's plus 500. They came in hot. The Pirates beat them too. So the Pirates are hot right now. There's some teams out there that are probably looking at this figure in a different way. They're talking about like how badly they've done against sub 500 teams, and the Pirates beating the bejesus out of them goes right into that bucket to fill that stat coffer where you're telling everybody, hey, look at what they've done against these crap teams. Well, does that take into account how the Pirates are playing right now? I think at the end of the day with baseball, one thing that you have to keep in mind is the really great teams, like the ones that are put together on paper that should be awesome, like the Dodgers, the Yankees, those teams, the way that they're put together, they should win. They look like they should win. They've got all these players, but that doesn't mean that they don't go into cold snaps. That doesn't mean that they don't struggle or they don't get injured or all that stuff happens. And it doesn't take into account that really from the top to the bottom in this league, with very few exceptions, these teams truly aren't all that far apart. Okay? Like the Rockies are very bad this year. Arguably the worst team that I've ever seen. Maybe the White Sox last year. But those are two of the worst teams I've ever seen play. It's hard. It's actually hard to put together a team that bad. And I'm a Pirates fan. I've covered some bad teams, right? I don't count the 2020 Pirates because the 2020 Pirates, I don't know that they wouldn't have straightened things out a little bit. I still think that team arguably had more talent on it, at least as far as position players go, really until you get to like right now. But the pitching side of things was a disaster. So it probably would have continued to be bad, but I think they would have hit better. I think there's some things they could have done a little bit better in 2020, but that team was bad. Did it matter necessarily that they played other bad teams? Not really. I don't think they were going to win one way or another. This one in particular, though, I do find it interesting, and I think that it speaks to the possibility that the Pirates can hang in there with some of these better teams because they still have a relatively tougher schedule. This next little stretch, it's not the worst. Seattle's a good team. Seattle's going to give the Pirates trouble. And if they pitch to Cal Raleigh, they're crazy. But that's going to be an interesting series because Seattle's not exactly at the top of the pyramid either. And the Pirates are coming in hot as hell. You never know what travel does to people. You never do. But it's interesting. Last point I want to make before we take another quick break. We are going to continue talking about how real this is in the third segment as well. But last point I wanted to make here, at least, is this stretch of games I got to tell you, I don't think they've gotten as much out of Brian Reynolds as they expect to, and I know for a fact they haven't gotten as much out of O'Neal Cruz as they expect to. Those are the two guys that are supposed to be the engines driving this offense. So the Pirates are doing what they're doing, I think, with two of their better offensive options not contributing nearly as much as you'd like them to. Sure, Brian Reynolds has turned it around here since the birth of his child, but he's not 100% Brian Reynolds yet. There's still something just a little off with him. I still think probably a few too many strikeouts for Brian Reynolds when he's really, really going. So he's not doing 100% what he could do or I think will do. O'Neal Cruz, O'Neal Cruz, we saw earlier in the season what O'Neal Cruz can do when he's playing the best baseball he can. I do think that he has shown major signs of improvement since Don Kelly benched him, but I also think that's still going on. That he's still moving back towards the mean. I think we have not seen the best of O'Neal Cruz yet. We need to see the power really start to come back. If this team does anything, O'Neal Cruz has got to get to 30 home runs. I think that's got to happen this year. He's got 15 now. He's halfway there. It should be doable. The stolen bases are still happening. The strikeouts are still crazy. That's those two guys that I think we all thought there's no way this team can win if those two aren't the horses driving it. Well, I don't think they've been the horses driving this. So I take that as a positive. I take that as a how real is this? Well, they're doing it without their best players being at their best. That should mean something, right? When we come back, let's pick this up and talk a little bit more about really how this thing could continue to be okay, even when they move some guys off. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're plumbing, HVAC, electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy to use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast. Join the Trademaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Hey, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Last segment here. How real is this? Let's keep going. 7 days, the last 7 games, the Pirates have an OPS of 753. That's good for 13th in the league. Okay. So they're doing better offensively, but they have not like skyrocketed to the top of the league. When we talk about like unprecedented stuff, I think it's important to note that the offense, while it's been prolific at scoring runs, I think it's also not necessarily started doing anything crazy. They've had a couple big innings where they've strung some things together and they've really taken advantage, especially against the Cardinals. They've really taken advantage of the bullpen. And I think they've managed to have a better game plan against the starters as well. They're not trying to get starters out of games. They're trying to jump on them and hit them hard whenever they do throw something in the zone. I think that was a tall task against Sonny Gray, although they managed to hang 4 on him, which most people haven't been able to do this year. So if the Pirates start moving on from players, I talked in the first segment about how it was going to make Don Kelly's job harder. And And it's really hard for me to tell you how real this is out of one side of my mouth, yet be telling you some of what's real probably isn't going to be here anymore come trade deadline time. I could see the Pirates changing their mind. I think before we get to that point, you have to understand this historic stretch and put it in relation to what the Pirates would need to do in order to get themselves back into the wild card race. You would need them to repeat this historic event. They don't have to shut guys out, but they'd have to win six in a row, 10 in a row. I think I said the other day on the show, they needed to have like a 20-10 month or a 25-5 month, something like that really flips everything on its head to really change the conversation about who you would be open to moving and who you wouldn't be open to moving. And the only reason I say that is because there's a few rentals that you might want to hold on to just to see where this thing plays out. It's not going to kill you. You were probably only going to get like a lottery ticket for them anyway. They're more valuable to you than whoever you were going to move them to, most likely. That's the sort of situation I'm talking about. I could see that being with like a guy like IKF, maybe, just because you just don't have anything ready made to come up. I could see it being with a guy like Tommy Pham, if only because you're barely going to get anything from him. And hey, at least right now he's hitting, so who cares? Keep him around. What are you going to get? A lottery ticket for him? Like, I think there's certain guys like that you might, if you're doing well and you're getting near something that means something to you, which for this team could be as simple as trying to eclipse that 76 win mark again. I think you could see them make a decision like that. But for the most part, I think you should brace yourself. And if that's the case, and we're going to be moving on from some players, I just want to really talk about what could come up here to replace things, right? It's not as simple as just bring up all the kids, because all the kids aren't playing well. Okay? Like, this Pirates system to me gets less exciting the closer to the major leagues I get. I mean, there's some guys in Indianapolis that I think the Pirates could call on to fill holes. You're not going to like some of the names, all right? Like Jack Sawinski is a guy that could get another shot. He's capable of playing the field. He's got big power. I'd imagine they probably want to give him another shot before they're done with him. And they've got to start thinking about being done with him, because there's going to be a 40-man crunch at the end of this year in December to protect people from the Rule 5, and the Pirates are going to have a list of guys that are probably facing the same thing Jack Sawinski is. He and Matt Gorski and Ji-Hwan Bae and players along those lines, they're probably staring down the barrel at losing their 40-man spot and being sacrificed for another player that needs added to it. I think you're going to have a lot of that stuff. So who could actually come up here and help? Nick York is, in my mind, the only like real offensive player that is interesting to me. Since May 1st, Nick York, and that's been almost 50 games at this point, he's hit 306 and an 806 OPS, a 118 WRC plus, 5 home runs, 30 RBIs, and he's batting 280 on the season in AAA. That's probably getting to the point where that's a guy that you want to see. Now, where does he play? We've talked about that before. It could be second base. It could be third base. I don't think he has shortstop in him. It could be corner outfield, although I don't think he's as good at corner outfield as he would be if he's in the dirt. I think he's better in the dirt. He could certainly be a platoon guy for you at first base, but that's probably not enough at bats for a guy like that. But this is a guy that, like, say you do move on from IKF or Adam Frazier, you probably have a spot for now. So that's one guy who could move up and kind of potentially backfill one of those trade spots, and you might actually be excited about it. I think he's about it though offensively. You talk about Billy Cook, I guess Billy Cook could be an option. I'm not sold on him. I think he's striking out way too much for the type of hitter he is. I do like his glove. I thought his little cameo up here in Pittsburgh, when Brian Reynolds went on the parental list, it wasn't good. I wasn't excited by what I saw. I thought he made some defensive faux pas. I thought he looked overmatched at the plate, which I didn't think he looked like when he got called up last September. So I'd like to see a little bit more from him. Again, I think Jack Sawinski is an option. I don't know that that's something you're going to be excited about. I think G1 Bay is done. I just don't see it. And I got to be blunt. I'm not seeing it from Peggy. I just don't see where Peggy goes. I don't see where Peggy plays. I think Liover Peguero is probably going to be a 40-man casualty. I just do not see where he fits in on this team. Malcolm Nunez is a little bit interesting. That's a guy that he has swung it here and there. They've primarily been playing him third base as opposed to first base. I'd like to see a little bit more first base, but we also don't really need him anymore to play first base because Spencer Horwitz has come along. Most of this team is not going to move offensively. I think you're going to have maybe Tommy Pham and IKF. I don't get the impression Joey Bart's going to be traded, if only because they don't trust Andy Rodriguez to get healthy. So for the most part, the offense could kind of stay what it is. And in a way, if they moved on from Bart, maybe that means more Henry, which I personally think is a good move anyway. But they're pretty locked in. Reynolds, Cruz aren't going anywhere. Gonzalez isn't going anywhere. Hayes, while I think they could trade him, I don't see it going anywhere. The contract's long. It's kind of hard to move. And he's hitting right now. So that's probably what you want to see from him, that 250, 260 hitter that keeps him here. The pitching staff, especially the bullpen, I think you could see suffer. David Bednar, Dennis Santana, I think Andrew Heaney. I think those three for sure. I'm losing steam on the Keller thing. I think they should do it, but I think they should wait for the off season. The more I look at the landscape, the less I think the match is going to be there at the trade deadline. I think it's going to be really hard to get back what I think you need to get back from Mitch Keller. So I'm looking to push it to the off season. And the more I'm looking at some of the other things, like, and this is maybe a little bit crazy crackpot on my part, but I'm going to do it anyway. I don't care. One of the guys I talked to in Greensboro told me yesterday morning that Connor Griffin is impossible to coach. And I was like, what? Because I'd never heard anything terrible about Connor Griffin. And when he said that to me, I was like, where's this coming from? I mean, like, his dad was a coach. I thought everybody said he was easy to coach. He goes, oh, no, you misunderstand me. He goes, before you point something out to him, like, you notice something he's doing and he's on his way over to you and you are puffing your chest out. You finally got something to tell this kid that he needs to work on. It turns out 9 times out of 10, he's coming to you telling you something he's going to fix about something he noticed in his game. He goes, so as a coach, you're kind of just like, okay, Connor, go ahead and take care of that. This kid's going to be probably the number one prospect in baseball as soon as Roman Anthony graduates with the Boston Red Sox. That's not by accident. And I do believe that Connor Griffin is going to wind up in Altoona before too long. And I believe that the door should be left open for Connor Griffin to potentially win himself a spot coming out of spring next year. I don't think that's that much of a stretch. From everything that I've been told, he's just going out of his way and pressing everybody that he touches and comes in contact with. Connor Griffin could wind up being an actual option for next year. And if that's the case, that might change some things as far as what I'm looking for. This is a guy that right away solves one of your outfield spots or solves your shortstop position. Two of the biggest pain points. And he comes with power and an incredible contact skill set too. Oh, and speed. He's one of these 5-tool players that actually happens to be one. It's going to be very hard to keep him from making the league at some point next year, even if he doesn't start out of spring. Maybe that changes your plans on what you're looking for. But in that case, I really want like a short-term IKF extension or something. Like, give me another year or two of IKF just to have him around so that I can be flexible with Connor Griffin and I don't need him to be McJesus right away. Listen, I've already gone long for this show. We're going to go ahead and call it quits. But I'll be back again with an all-new show tomorrow morning. Remember, it's going to be a special one. We're going to do some tributes to some Pirates players who've served the country, and we'll have a good time celebrating in our own way here on Locked On Pirates. So make sure you're there. Thanks, everybody. Let's go Bucks.